Hello and welcome back to Will It Work. Today we're going to take a look at the iPod Photo. This came out in the fall of 2004 and was kind of a high-end configuration to the existing fourth generation iPod line. It is the first iPod with a color screen and the ability to sync and display photos. I think it's largely been forgotten about because its successor, the 5G or video iPod, was so popular and Apple made that for 2 years and that kind of morphed into the iPod Classic, which they made for another 7 years. So I think the photo just kind of gets forgotten about. Now I really like it because Apple made a pretty cool accessory for it, the camera connector. It's a 30-pin connector on this end and a USB connector on this end. And what this allowed you to do was hook up a digital camera and import pictures from the camera right onto the iPod Photo directly. Apple also supported SD card readers with this connector, which if you think about it, when you plug a point and shoot camera into your computer, it literally just becomes an SD card reader at that point. So it's kind of the same thing. So I was wondering, would it be possible to fool the iPod Photo into connecting to other media and importing pictures from it as well? So if you've ever looked on the SD card of a digital camera, you've noticed that folder called DCIM. And inside of it is sort of a strange folder and file structure where all your pictures are stored. This is how a computer or other device that can import photos knows a digital camera has been plugged into it. It sees that folder and that specific file and naming structure and goes, oh, it's a digital camera. Let me present you the thumbnails of all the JPEGs and you can decide what you want to import. So let's take a look and see if we can learn a little something about how that works, and then we'll see if we can get the iPod Photo to work with other devices as well. Okay, so the first device we're going to try and trick the iPod Photo into using is just a USB thumb drive, which I have mounted here on my desktop called Untitled. This device will have to be formatted in FAT. It can be 12, 16, or 32, but it must be formatted in FAT. On the root of this drive, we must create a folder called DCIM in all capital letters. And under that, we must make another folder that has to be exactly 8 characters long. It can be entirely numeric as long as the first character is a 1 or higher. It cannot be a 0. Or you can mix alphanumeric together as long as the first 3 characters are numeric, such as this 555 pics folder. So what I'm going to do is copy in these 4 photos I took in New York City. And then we will launch the image capture application program. So as you can see, it sees the stick as a digital camera. It even calls it a camera down here in the bottom left, but there are no photos available. Now, why is this? Well, as it turns out, the files themselves have a strict naming convention that must be adhered to. They must be in the 8.3 format, which is 8 characters for the name, 3 for the extension. So they can be entirely numeric. So you could do something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And they can be alphanumeric as long as the last 4 characters are numeric. So a lot of times what you would see from manufacturers is this format, IMG underscore and then 4 numbers. Some manufacturers used pict and 4 numbers, and others still use just DSC with 5 numbers. Any of these will work. So let's relaunch the image capture program. Aha, there they are, all 4 photos. We have successfully tricked this application program into thinking the USB thumb drive is a digital camera. Now let's go and see if we can trick the iPod Photo into thinking it's a digital camera as well. Okay, so let's see if we can get this to work. First thing we'll do is plug in the camera connector to the iPod Photo. We'll get a screen here that says no card inserted. Now I figure if we're going to use a thumb drive, why not do it with some style? Many of you will recognize this as the first generation iPod Shuffle, which also doubles as a thumb drive. So let's try it out. I'll bet you've never seen an iPod inserted into another iPod before. Aha! It sees the 4 photos. Let's import them. So when it's done, we can erase off the source if we want to. And we'll go into this roll of photos. Browse. And there are the 4 photos. So it's interesting. When it imports photos, it doesn't put them into the normal photo database like the other pictures that you would have synced from your computer. It actually sticks them in a special folder. And the next time you sync to your computer's, iTunes would have optimized those photos for the iPod screen and then synced them into the photo database with the rest of your pictures. But in the meantime, they're in a temporary folder. And you know what's interesting? It's a DCIM folder. Yeah, Apple creates that, including the entire file and folder structure. It even uses Apple in its name with 3 numbers at the beginning and then APPLE. So it makes me wonder, if the photos are set up like that, has the iPod photo now become a digital camera as well? Let's find out. Disconnect this. Set this down. I'm going to tilt the camera down a little bit here. And we are going to attempt to import them to the iPhone because the iPhone can import photos from a digital camera. In fact, this USB to Lightning adapter I've been using in all my videos for the Files app is actually originally intended to be for connecting a digital camera. So we're going to use it for its original purpose today. Imagine that. So the first thing we'll do here is connect the 30-pin cable into the iPod photo. And then I will put this into the adapter here. And when you plug in a digital camera to an iPhone and you're in the Photos app, a 5th icon will show up here in the corner. It says Import. So let's see what happens when we plug it in. And there it is. So we'll hit import. There are those 4 photos. We can select which ones we want to import, or we can import all of them. Just import all. And we will keep them on the source device. And that's it. They're imported. It's that quick. So pretty neat. We've gone from an iPod Shuffle to an iPod Photo to an iPhone, all using Apple's digital picture import software. So what else can we trick the iPod Photo into importing pictures from? Okay, so let's try a BlackBerry. Now, although the BlackBerry has its own digital camera, it does not use the DCIM folder. It has its own folder structure. So I've set it up manually like I did with the iPod Shuffle. So let's see if it works. Unsupported device. Now, unfortunately, this is a kind of generic message on the iPod Photo. It could mean literally an unsupported device, like if I plugged in a USB mouse, or it could mean that the device is simply requiring too much power, which I believe is the case with the BlackBerry because it charges only over the USB cable. And we cannot plug this into a powered hub because if you plug in any kind of hub to the iPod Photo, it immediately says unsupported device. So that really is going to limit us in the types of devices we can use with the iPod Photo versus the iPhone, where we can introduce a powered hub to get around the problem. Okay, so let's try a Palm PDA. Now, while this Palm doesn't have a camera, it does have a paint program, and I made a little image and saved it as a JPEG, created the DCIM folder, and put it all in there with the proper naming convention and everything. So let's see if that works. Now, unlike the BlackBerry, the Palm doesn't charge over USB. It has a separate AC adapter for that, so maybe we'll have better luck. So we'll turn on the mass storage here, and we'll plug it into the iPod Photo. Hey, there it is. It sees it. Import that photo. Done. Let's take a look. Okay, so I'm no Picasso, but you get the picture. So the Palm works perfectly fine. A lot of later Palms had cameras in them, and I looked up the manual for one of them, the Centro, which I think was the last traditional Palm cell phone PDA they made, and it said that it stores the pictures in a DCIM folder. So That would be a real world example of if you had a palm in that era with a camera, you could take pictures and plug it directly into the iPod Photo and transfer them. So pretty cool. Okay, so let's look at the Nokia N810 Linux tablet. This also does not charge over USB. It has its own AC adapter here. And although it has a little camera up here, it's really just a webcam for video conferencing, and none of the built-in apps even use it anyway. So I've had to create the DCIM folder like I've done on the iPod Shuffle. So let's plug it in here to the iPod Photo. And if you look on the screen here, it says connected to USB, which looks good. But as we look on the iPod Photo screen, it just says no card inserted. I don't understand this. This should work. This works perfectly fine if I plug it into the iPhone and go into the Photos app. It sees it as a digital camera. The thumbnails come up and you can import everything. This also has another SD card that you can use in addition to the internal SD card. And I've set it up on that one as well, and it does the exact same thing. So I don't know why this doesn't work. I really have no explanation for it, but it doesn't work. Okay, so let's look at the Sony PlayStation Portable. This charges over an AC adapter, but it also can charge over the USB cable. Now, Sony doesn't always get it right, but when they do get it right, they really get it right. For instance, I can go into the settings and turn off the charge over the USB cable, as well as turn off the auto connect. So this has been really great in troubleshooting what works with the iPod Photo and what doesn't. Auto connect's not an issue, but if I do have the charge on over a USB cable, I get the unsupported device message, just like I did with the BlackBerry. It's just simply wanting too much power. So I've turned that off in the settings, and let's see what happens when there's no charge over the USB cable. There it is, 4 photos. Works perfectly fine with the PlayStation Portable. I love this. So another interesting thing that I found out was that Sony actually had a little camera you could get for this, a couple different models that plugged into the mini USB port at the top. And I looked up the manual online and it saves the pictures in a DCIM folder. It works just like a regular digital camera. So this is another real world example. If you had one of these back in the early 2000s and you had an iPod Photo, you could go around and take pictures with this and then sideload them right onto the iPod Photo without a desktop computer. So pretty cool, neat device, and it works great. Okay, so let's try a USB keyboard. Spoiler alert, nothing happens. I've tried a mouse too as well. Both of them are unsupported devices. No surprise there. There's no hidden debugger development feature that was left on by mistake that lets you control the iPod interface with arrow keys or mouse clicks. But what I have here is my AlphaSmart 3000 word processor, which can also double as just a USB keyboard. What I like about it is the display will tell you what type of computer it thinks it's plugged into. So if you plug it in a Mac, it says it's emulating a Mac keyboard. If you plug it into a PC, it will tell you it's emulating a PC keyboard. What I found, if I plug it in other devices around my house that can use a USB keyboard, like a smart TV or a Blu-ray player, it will emulate a PC keyboard. And if I plugged it into my iPhone, it will emulate a Mac keyboard. So PC seems to be the default, and if it detects Apple manufacturer on the USB bus, then it switches to a Mac keyboard. So let's see what happens when we plug this into the iPod Photo. So I get unsupported device, like I said, but what does the AlphaSmart think it's plugged into? A Mac. I love it. Okay, so just one little point before I do my final bit here. Over the past year, I've done a lot of magnetic media drives connected to the iPhone, like a zip drive, an LS120 drive, click discs, magneto-optical drive, and a slew of SCSI devices that were all magnetic media. Unfortunately, I don't have any of them anymore. I sold them after doing each video. So I'd like to get a couple of those back in again and try it out with the iPod Photo. So look for a follow-up video to this one sometime in the future. Okay, the last thing I wanted to do was just something fun. I got one of these disco lights that you see advertised everywhere. You just plug them into a USB port. They light up and react to sound and music. And then I was going to get this little speaker on top, which looks a lot like those Pro speakers from the G4 Cube days. and have a little light show going on. Unfortunately, this just uses way too much power and it just didn't work at all. So I've had to downsize a little bit. I've got one of these little USB lights here, and mostly you just put these in a car console USB port to light up that dark console. It only uses about 30 milliamps, so I think it's going to work fine. So we'll plug it in. Yeah, lights up just fine. Let's put the speaker in here. We'll get some music going. And I'll leave you with a little song.